Painful, heavy periods. So let's talk about period health. And I think this is something, obviously we experience every month of our lives from the time that we begin ovulating until when we hit menopause. And in some women, girls are getting their periods extremely young, or hitting menopause early. So all of these are huge factors in understanding your overall health as a woman and as a person. And so because this is something that honestly, some women suffer for 2 to 3 weeks out of every month and maybe only feel good for one of the weeks, at maximum 2 of the weeks. So this is one of my favorite topics to really break through some myths and bring some clarity around what is a healthy period. So as we all know, we get a cycle when an egg is not fertilized. So one of our ovaries, usually only one per month, you get one, they alternate that release an egg. When that egg is released and not fertilized, then the endometrial lining needs to shed what's there. So that's the bleed that we have on a cycle. Now, I want to bring a little attention to how much blood is a normal amount of blood. So no more than 3 tablespoons of blood is considered normal in an entire cycle. That's start to finish. And that seems like, oh my gosh, I remember the time at which I was soaking through a super tampon in like 20 minutes, and having incredible cramps and bloating and breast pain and all of the things. And this is a sign. If you have a heavy, painful period, if you have heavy flow, if you have like really tender breasts, lots of mood swings and depression and things that lead up to your cycle, we have to look at the health of your lymphatic system, your gut, and your liver. So simply put, your body is trillions of cells and 2 fluids. We have blood and lymph. The blood feeds, the lymph cleans. You hear this on every call because it's the foundation of your health to start. So the lymphatic system's job is to eliminate all digestive and cellular waste from the anything you eat, drink, breathe, or put on your skin. It needs to be eliminated and brought to the kidneys and then filtered out through the urine. When this system gets backed up, we start to get what's called lymphatic acidosis. So the lymph system is stagnated and it's filling with waste. And so this is a big problem. So this acidosis will cause inflammation throughout the entire body, including that of the ovaries, the uterus, all of the basically the fluids in the body start to get congested and more sticky per se. That's one factor in understanding your period. So when your system is really backed up and really acidic, your period is also a very cleansing time for your body. So your body is actually eliminating what it doesn't want. And so as a primate species, our blood pH has to stay at a 7.4 at all times. And so that lining, the endometrial lining, technically speaking, if we were more alkaline and our body was healthier, we would actually be able to reabsorb some of that blood back into our system. But because most of our bodies are more on the acid side of the fence, we are actually shedding an excess amount of blood. The body's using it as an opportunity to purge. And when we have extreme heavy bleeding, a lot of women struggle with lightheadedness and anemia as a result, which is an iron deficiency, which is also not just related to the heavy bleed, it's also related to the health of the liver. So I'm going to go in really quick and talk about the root cause of these heavy periods outside of lymphatic congestion, and acidosis is one element, but the second element is actually your gut health. So if you struggle with PCOS, endometriosis, painful heavy periods, anemia, we actually have to look at the gut as the root cause. So the gut is a vital piece of your overall health, including your brain, your nervous system, and your cycles. So a lot of people don't contribute their gut health to their cycle health, but 80% of your hormones are actually made in the gut. And the microbiota in your gut, so all of the healthy microbes in your gut, are actually what communicate with the brain. And they communicate with something called the Hpa axis. This is the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And this is a really, really important piece to know. Hold on, my camera just went off. There we go. This is a really important piece to understand, that the Hpa axis is an essential communication system. And when we're looking at the Hpa axis, we look at the pituitary gland, and I like to call the pituitary gland the master gland. And the reason is it's actually like a pea-sized gland that's in the brain that produces a number of hormones. And each of these hormones actually affect a specific part of the body. So they affect the pituitary actually controls the function of all of the other endocrine glands, as well as the endocrine system, the thyroid glands, the adrenal glands, the ovaries, and in men, the testicles. So since this call is specifically for women, let's dive into what that means. So when the pituitary gland is responsible for providing all of these hormones for the entire endocrine system in the ovaries, now what makes the pituitary not function properly? Well, the gut. If the gut is offline, so if the gut goes down and the microbiota is not healthy, meaning, we have a depleted level of gut bacteria, or we have holes in the tight junctions of the gut lining, we will not have proper communication going from the gut to the hypothalamus, which communicates to the pituitary, which is our master gland that's controlling. It's like the puppet master. She's controlling the whole thing. So there's a lot of evidence and research showing that the gut microbiome actually affects the regulation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis behavior, which is the central integrative systems which are crucial to physiological adaptation and the organisms of external stressors. So we have to look at all sorts of things: diet, stress, environmental toxins, you name it. The Hpa axis is the hypothalamus pituitary axis that's controlled by the microbiota. And without this communication, it'll actually start to create what's called a negative feedback loop. And when a negative feedback loop begins, we actually have an imbalance of the hormones. So the body actually will start taking back estrogen or overproducing androgens, which are the male hormones. And so we start to see this huge imbalance, and the mood goes crazy. We got super depressed or super anxious. We have heavy bleeding. And then in more chronic conditions, which means long term, we start to see things like endometriosis and PCOS. And so in addition to this Hpa axis being off, we'll have an oversecretion of corticosteroid, which actually is what triggers that negative feedback loop and that imbalance in the endocrine hormones. So I actually want to share my screen with you really quick. Oh, shoot, I have people in the waiting room. Sorry about that, guys. So I want to share my screen with you really quick and show you a little bit more about this. And we're going to bring on a testimonial for you as well shortly. But here is a picture of the uterus and the ovaries, or excuse me, the normal ovaries, and then a polycystic ovary. So you see, here's our uterus, and then up here is what you would call the endometrial lining. Now, one common thing that women suffer with is called polycystic ovarian syndrome. And a lot of times doctors will say, well, it's common. It is common. It is absolutely not normal. There's nothing normal about polycystic ovarian syndrome. So when you look at PCOS, it's actually a hormonal disorder that we have really common with infrequent periods. So women that don't ovulate or regulate their cycles or bleed monthly. Well, why are they not bleeding monthly? That communication is not getting to the brain properly. So that's one of that's like the main reason that people don't bleed regularly, is a lack of healthy gut bacteria that's not communicating with the hypothalamus, that's not communicating with the pituitary, that's not telling the body to shed its endometrial lining. And so we see infrequent or prolonged menstrual periods, or excessive male hormones, which are called androgen levels. And the ovaries may develop numerous amounts of small collections of fluid-like follicles, and fail to regulate properly releasing these eggs. So this is really common when we have somebody who has PCOS. They also have fertility issues. Now, excess androgens are elevated levels of male hormones, like I explained, and they result in physical signs such as excessive facial hair, occasionally severe acne, or male pattern baldness. Like we can actually see like some alopecia symptoms or baldness symptoms. And this is really because of our liver health. So again, going back to the gut, gut is down, microbiota is not communicating with the brain, pituitary is not shedding blood properly. Now, what happens also if the gut is not regulated, and if we have holes tearing in the tight junctions of the gut lining? Now, what causes damage to the gut? Acid forming foods and chemical pesticides and pharmaceutical drugs, including birth control. And I want to touch on the fact that when we have abnormal periods, the allopathic approach, the first thing is to put you on birth control. And birth control is like this way to like regulate your hormones because they're unregulated. So that's a band-aid to the problem. Really, the underlying cause is we need to heal your gut and we need to heal your liver. So, and then, from birth control, it causes anxiety and depression. Then we put you on those meds, and those meds cause infertility, and it goes on, and it's a cycle. But when we have gut injury, that comes from coffee, alcohol, refined sugars, heavy dairy and glutens, and chemical pesticides are the number one detriment to our gut biome. They actually cause permeation in the tight junctions, like they cause leaky gut, and we have leaky membranes. So now we have the outside world flooding into the inside of your immune system completely unregulated. So completely unregulated, we have everything just flooding into your immune system. Your body says like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? And we start having an inflammatory response. In addition to that, the liver has to work on picking up all of that mess. So the liver starts taking on these fatty deposits, glycogen stores, fat stores, and the higher protein and the higher fat diet we eat, we have a fattier liver. Even just 1 pound of extra fat on the liver will cause insulin resistance. So then we have, insulin coming to the door, or glucose coming to the door carried with insulin, says, hey, I've got some insulin for you. And the liver says, no, we're full. You got to go back. And this is part of the excessive insulin now. So now we have excessive insulin on the ovary. And so we see this connection with PCOS and type 2 diabetes go hand in hand. And type 2 is, again, diet related. So excess insulin is the hormone produced by the pancreas that allows you to use sugar and primarily support your body's energy. So if your cells become resistant to the action of insulin, and the resistance is happening from the liver, the production is happening in the pancreas, then your blood sugar levels can rise and your body actually might produce more insulin. Excess insulin might increase your androgen production, causing difficulty with ovulation. So again, that high level of the male hormone, the androgens that actually start to cause those polycystic ovarian syndrome, is actually coming from the insulin resistance, which is coming from the liver, which is coming from the gut. So you got to back that train up, right? And understand the root cause. Low-grade inflammation is also something that we see when we have inflammation. Inflammation is our body's immune response to actually protect and serve our body. So acute inflammation is really great. For example, like I came in my room the other day and I actually smashed my knee on my desk, super hurt. Inflammation floods there. My body starts producing lots of white blood cells to fight any infection that could be there and to help the area heal fast. Acute inflammation is amazing for our body. Chronic inflammation means repeat damage over and over and over and long term. And now when we have this inflammation, it actually stimulates the polycystic ovaries to produce more androgens. And more androgens lead to the heart and to blood vessel problems. So we start to see this long-term inflammation actually turn into more and more congestion for the body, more blood issues. We start to see clotting issues in the blood. And then also the liver secretes a hormone that's delivered to the endometrial lining, to the uterus, to thin the blood. So if you're dealing with blood clots, heavy clotty periods, again, liver, and then stomach, and then diet. So now I'm going to talk about one other really common but not normal period issue is endometriosis. And this actually occurs in a couple of ways. So when we have the endometrial lining that continues to get thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker, we're going to develop endometriosis, which is endometrial cells that are forming like little polyps almost on the uterus. And in time, when there's consistent buildup of this endometrial lining, the endometriosis, the little bits of tissues will actually start growing outside the endometrium, and they'll grow on other pelvic organs. They can grow outside on the ovaries, but you'll start to see like the ovaries and fallopian tubes have these little polyps. These are called endometriosis. Again, common, but absolutely not normal. So outside the uterus, the endometrial tissue will thicken and bleed. So you'll start to have a really, really heavy period. And this is going to cause a lot of discomfort in intercourse. This is going to cause really bad discomfort in periods. Like this is like the doubled over in pain. Oh my gosh, my period, it takes me out of commission. Not normal, but common. The other reasons that we see endometriosis forming is hormones such as estrogen may transform embryonic cells, and they may transfer them in early stages of development, even in like early puberty. This can start, and it'll transfer them actually to like the endometriosis cells. And so endometriosis will start forming. Now, what creates the estrogens to be high? Poor gut health, poor communication to the pituitary, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis being off. We're either producing excess estrogen or excess androgens. Now, a lot of times women that have had surgeries, hysterectomies, C-sections, endometrial cells can actually attach to the surgical incision. So it's really important to do some castor oil packing, to really do belly massage, to get into an abdominal therapist if you've had abdominal surgeries. Endometrial cell transport is actually where the blood vessels or the tissue, like the lymphatic system, which is this major system in your body, will transport endometrial cells to other parts of the body, because the lymphatic system is so congested. It's just like doesn't even know where to go. And these endometrial cells will get trapped in the lymph and start traveling. And then there's one that's called an immune disorder, but we don't actually have immune disorders. We have lymphatic issues. And when we heal the lymphatic system, we heal the immune issues. But a problem with the immune system may make the body unable to recognize and actually destroy endometrial-like tissue that's growing outside the uterus. So again, the issues are in your tissues. And this is a really, really important thing to understand overall. I'm going to stop my share. So if you got the picture, so these are the endometriosis, these are the polycystic ovarian syndrome, and other things that come along with this disruption of the gut biome. So if you have a poor gut and you have heavy periods, you probably have anxiety, you probably have depression, or you deal with a lot of blues around the cycle, a lot of cravings for chocolate. That is not like a lack of correlation. That's not like, oh, I just like chocolate. That's actually a mineral depletion sign. And the body is craving that magnesium and that iron. And that is part of what your body is trying to restore itself with. So a lot of women will crave more like red meat, these iron-rich foods, when you could actually get all of that iron from like really great leafy greens and legumes and things that are actually going to nourish and not inflame your body. So I want to bring Laura on really quick, because she is really passionate about this topic. And Laura and I have been working together for about a year with her health journey, and she's just really soaring. And I'm so excited to have her share, and I will bring her on now.
Hi, thank you, Carrie.
You're so
My
welcome.
name is Laura, everyone. Good to be here. So excited to share a little bit about my story. Yeah, I think everything that you just talked about is something that I've experienced. And I don't necessarily remember my first period, but I remember the first time that I passed out from cramps, and it was in a friend's house in her basement bathroom. And I passed out, and I was in so much pain from the cramps, and I was so terrified, and I didn't even have energy to crawl to my phone. Like, it was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. And that was when I was about 17. And what continued with my period was those episodes. There was maybe like 5 or 6 throughout my life with that, but I just started suffering immensely. The intense bleeding, like Carrie said at the beginning, like I was bleeding through the super tampons, you know, and wearing pads. And I was experiencing insane cramps. My mom would take me to the doctor and they would write me a prescription for painkillers, which would then, it's either I have cramps or I'm nauseous and loopy on the couch, so it just didn't equal out for me. And I started looking for like alternative ways to start handling my symptoms. And I would started using cramp bark. Um, I would turn to like the heated pads, like the heated plug-in blanket type things. I started looking at my diet. I had been vegetarian for quite a while, but I started realizing like, okay, what I'm eating before my period is starting to affect like how I feel on my period. And so I started eliminating like everything, caffeine, wine, alcohol, chocolate, deep fried foods. Like I was eliminating everything out of my diet and nothing was working. It was getting worse. I was bleeding more and more as I got diagnosed with anemia. I went to the doctor. I had to have an ultrasound on my uterus and they found all these fibroids and cysts. But really no solution, just kind of like, well, here you go, you can have surgery. But I had surgery in the beginning of my life and had other surgeries. That just wasn't the path that I was trying to go down. And a little backstory, Carrie's talking about gut health and everything. By the age of 4 or 5, I think I had about 5 surgeries already from chronic ear infections and chronic throat infections. I had my tonsils removed. So I grew up on antibiotics, and then I ended up having chronic bladder infections in high school, so more antibiotics. And then when I was 24, I had my thyroid removed. So my body was just clearly over time, just slowly failing almost in a way. And so when I, had gone on this journey, taking back some power by addressing my diet, addressing my lifestyle, and still nothing was happening, nothing was changing, nothing was improving. I literally was getting sicker by the day. I finally came across Carrie, and we started addressing my gut health. And it has been about a year that I have been working with her, rebuilding my gut microbiome, using herbs to, heal the pancreas, the kidneys, the liver, my lymphatic system, my endocrine system, all of that. And I would say I didn't even realize like the period stuff was going to be like this awesome, amazing benefit. But I want to say about 6 months ago, I started realizing like, wait, my periods are getting easier, like I'm not getting cramps like I used to. I have more energy while on my period. I used to spend like 2 to 3 days just on my couch. I would want to call into work sick. But this last period that I had, I was outside running. Like that is just foreign to me, which is just, I don't know, it feels so great. I used to be a server and I had switched to using a Diva cup. And during my shift, if any of you have served, like you don't have time to go to the bathroom. So I would have a Diva cup and I would have an overnight pad on, because I didn't know like how long I would have to go. And I brought a pad to like just laugh at how life used to be for me. Like this is literally an overnight pad that I used to like, it's the freaking size of my forearm. I have an entire bag of these now that I haven't used. They're just sitting there, but like this is what we women have to deal with, and we think that it's normal. And just the journey that I've been on with Carrie and myself, healing my gut and now healing my liver and just addressing this, like my periods, like I emptied my Diva cup this last time, which if you don't know what a Diva cup, it's a little plastic container that it's just easier to use that than tampons, because tampons just became painful for me. But I emptied it, I want to say, oh, my dog says hi. I emptied it, I want to say total for the whole time I was bleeding, like 5 times. I used to empty it 5 times per night, like overnight. So it's just, it's just amazing what the body can do once you start giving it the tools and the nourishment that it needs to heal itself. So Carrie, thank you for helping me learn how to do that for my body, and thank all the people on here for allowing me to share my story.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's just amazing. And so I love that, you know, you did actually try addressing with diet specifically in the beginning. And it goes to show that we actually have to get the chemicals out of our body first. And how Laura and I worked together was removing glyphosate out of her body, like getting the chemical pesticides out, getting the inflammatory proteins down, and then repairing the tight junction damage and cleaning up the lymphatic system with organic micronutrient superfoods and wild crafted organic botanical, cellular botanical herbs. So yeah, these are all things that are common but not normal. And I want to make one more attention towards, you know, young periods, like girls getting their periods when they're 8. Like you're a kid. Like a kid, you are not supposed to be bleeding at 8 years old. And that is a sign of all the growth hormones and the acidosis and the overstimulation to the pituitary, and the pituitary is overproducing GSH hormones, and we're getting periods younger and younger and breasts younger and younger and bleeding heavier. Like, what 8-year-old wants to play at the park and be like, I have my period? And it's heartbreaking to me to see where we're going as a society, and that we think this is normal, but it's not normal. It's not normal to have painful breasts. You should have no more than 15 minutes of discomfort before a cycle. Maybe like I can feel like a sensation, like I think I'm ovulating, and or nothing. I'll just like be in the grocery store and I'll be like, oh, there's my cycle. No warning signs that it's coming. Whereas before, you couldn't even touch me. You couldn't give me a hug. My husband would try to hug me and I would cry. I was like, oh my God, don't touch me. It hurts so bad because my estrogen was through the roof, because my hormone system was so off. And estrogen is an acid-based hormone, which increases your inflammation, which increases your pain. So I was emotional, irritable, in pain, swollen, retaining water, gaining weight, getting lightheaded, heavy bleeding, getting all the anemia symptoms. Like I thought I was having like a grand mal miscarriage every single time I had a cycle. And it's, you know, again, common but not normal. And getting on birth control to regulate is not the answer. The answer is to heal the gut biome and to heal the liver and to get the pancreas regulated. And then you will thrive instead of just survive through your periods. So I want to open up if anybody has any questions. Yes, I see a question in there. Starting the cleansing journey and nourishment journey, I have a friend who had way less pain but heavier than normal period. Yes. So the very first one, your body's going to clean that endometrial lining. So it's really common for your first period when you're detoxing to be heavier, because the body's like, yeah, let's get this out of here. And then they'll continue to get lighter and lighter. So actually a normal period should be no more than 3 tablespoons of blood, and really around 3 to 5 days. So, and they should taper off to light spotting towards the end. If you look at wild animals, they don't walk around gushing blood, they lightly spot. So we always have to look to the animal kingdom when we're looking for what is normal here, because what we're experiencing is not normal. And the level of toxicity that we've experienced is not normal. So thank you all so much for being here. If you know a woman that suffers from PCOS or endometriosis or painful heavy periods or anemia, please connect them in with me, and whoever brought you to this call can help you with a solution, can help you get connected with me. And then I'm going to stop the stream on Facebook, and we are going to open the floor up for Q&A on just regenerative health in general. If you're interested in learning about our nourishment, our cleansing protocols, or our gut healing protocols.